All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I have the distinct pleasure of moderating today, and I'll start things off by saying, if you're joining us here and you're close to a laptop or a phone, feel free to jump into the Q&A section and give us some questions. We're going to try and work in as many as we can throughout our discussion. All right, so today we have Flor Marshall, Sean Connolly, and Ryan Salandi joining us. Thank you all for joining today. I'm going to start off by reading some bios on our folks here. All right, so Flor, you're up first here. Flor is a dedicated front-end software engineer at Supernormal with a non-traditional path to a career in tech. Despite her academic background in linguistics and German, her journey into software engineering began after college while working at a hedge fund in New York City. This role exposed her to coding through Python scripts for analyzing economic data, igniting her passion for technology, and leading her to pursue software engineering full-time. Now Flor excels in transforming design and UI mocks into functional, user-centric digital experiences, showcasing a remarkable blend of technical skill and creative vision. Her journey highlights the transformative potential of non-traditional pathways into tech, demonstrating how diverse experiences can enrich one's approach to problem solving and drive innovation in software engineering. Flor, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Ryan, you're up next here. Ryan Salandi is a versatile professional who transitioned from graphic design to web development. Starting as a graphic designer, Ryan's curiosity for the digital landscape motivated him to explore web development as an apprentice. With dedication to learning, Ryan honed his skills in coding languages and web architecture, evolving into a web developer. Now, as the lead web developer at George Washington University, Ryan blends his design skills with technical expertise to drive innovation and lead some web projects. Ryan, thanks for joining us. We appreciate having you.
All right, thank you.
All right, Sean. And Sean Connolly is the administrative supervisor in GW's Office of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. Sean manages the budget, financial forecasts, data reporting, and operational logistics for the team. Sean moved to the Office of Innovation and Entrepreneurship after previously working at American University and the Pennsylvania Higher Education Assistance Agency. Sean received a Bachelor of Science in Education and Public Policy at the Pennsylvania State University with minors in political science, labor employment relations, and sociology. He received his Master's of Business Administration from the College of Business at the University of Illinois. Sean, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks, so we're going to dive right into it here. I know you all have been waiting for the discussion, so I'm just thrilled to get into it. So I'll pose my first question here for Flor and Ryan. And Flor, if you wouldn't mind kind of kicking us off, can you share a little bit more about yourself and what you were doing before you entered your apprenticeship program?
Yeah, sure. So before I started my apprenticeship program, I was working at a hedge fund in New York City. I was hired there to run operations, so making sure that everything day to day was taken care of. I also focused on, HR type responsibilities. And though the environment was really fast paced, I learned a lot about the stock market. I really felt like disillusioned with my work. I was busy and I had plenty to do, but I just really felt unmotivated. I missed the desire to learn and the creativity that comes with it.
That's great. Ryan, can we shift over to you for that question?
Yeah, before my apprenticeship, I was primarily a graphic designer or UX designer at that time. I then shifted over into the apprenticeship program to do web development and training, which then tossed me over to the Office of Innovation where Sean is located. And there I actually finished out my year for web development.
That's great. I think what's fascinating about both of your stories is the evolution to where you are now, and having started as an apprentice and then moving your way all the way up into these thriving roles is pretty exciting to see.
Agreed.
All right, so Sean, so having hired an apprentice, can you share a bit more about what you're looking for in that role when you were hiring, and maybe how long it was vacant, and what motivated you to hire Ryan in specific, and maybe look for an apprentice?
Of course. So I'll start with why we went with an apprenticeship program. Here at GW, we have a real focus now currently on getting a staff that looks like the Washington, D.C. area. So we're focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and really bringing in staff from non-traditional backgrounds. So when our manager, Jim Chung, the Associate Vice President for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, met Jimena, the CEO of Build Within, he said, let's start this thing. Let's get apprentices into higher education. So I'm really excited to be a part of this program. When I was looking for an apprentice, I wanted someone who is really self-motivated and wants to learn. Again, we're at an institution of higher education, so learning is expected in every aspect of every position. So I wanted someone that would come in, learn how to work within the bureaucracy, because there's just so much red tape within these established organizations. And I wanted someone who could gradually become independent through this year-long journey of an apprenticeship. The position was vacant just a few weeks. Build Within did a great job of connecting us with qualified candidates. And in the end, we chose Ryan because of his background. He was able to give concrete examples of specific tasks that he completed in the past that were really impressive. And then he showed motivation, and he was able to say exactly where he wanted to go. He said exactly what he wanted to do in this apprenticeship, but also he was able to articulate his long-term goals. So I hope Ryan is achieving those long-term goals today. We're certainly proud of everything he's accomplished so far at GW.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that, Sean. I think what's so interesting about some of these tech and tech adjacent roles is how difficult it is to break into these positions. And so I'm curious to hear from Flora and Ryan as well, how you prepared yourself for a career in tech, and hearing a little bit about that story. And did you find it helpful, any of the prep work that you did before?
I can go ahead and start and share my answer first. Yeah, so I basically tried to just dive in to, everything that had to do with being a software engineer or learning a programming language. I tried to get my hands on anything that would kind of demystify what that meant and how to bridge the gap between where I was and where I wanted to be. So I found a lot of online communities that were really helpful, welcoming, a lot of educational resources, and at the time, an in-person program that really helped accelerate my learning. We met in person. It was actually this organization called Mother Coders, and so it brought moms on Saturday mornings to a library in New York City, and basically, taught us what it meant to be a software engineer, what it meant to be a product manager, all of those roles that seemed so, out of touch or out of our reach. They just brought us together to kind of demystify and teach us what it was all about. And so then once you have that kind of knowledge, you were prepared to, go to the next opportunity.
For me, it was more or less utilizing those self-paced courses that are online. Was it Odin Project, Free Code Camp? I utilized those and then basically was trying to see how I can tie in graphic design into coding, like utilizing the skills that I already had and then try to image that onto actual coding. Outside of that, I also reached out to people who are in the industry because I was getting a lot of false information, but once you get somebody that's in the industry, they can actually tell you what it really is like versus what you may see online or, YouTube, because that's one of the channels I went down was YouTube Ventures. It's just like YouTube video after YouTube video, and seeking out mentors was actually a very helpful platform for me to actually get answers.
And Ryan and Flora, as a follow-up question here, Ryan, for your boot camp and Flora for the Mothers in Coding prep classes, would you say that you still utilize some of the skills that you learned within those those classes and boot camps today, or have you kind of advanced so far that those aren't as applicable?
I'll go ahead. I would say those were starting points because at the end of the day, it was just to show that you knew the fundamentals or methodologies that you would actually need for coding. Once you get past that, and then especially where I'm at right now, I mean, I barely touch code at this point. Like, I'm usually handing it over to somebody else, but at the same token, there are other platforms that you can actually utilize to practice. So it's like to create your own projects that you want to build and then try to build it.
To echo what Ryan said, yes, it was a great foundation to kind of open the door and really hone in how you approach different projects that you'd like to build, or the way that you learn. So it was definitely a good starting point. It really gave me the opportunity and the self-reflection of like, okay, if this is something I really want to do, I have to tailor my learning and seek out opportunities that kind of complement where I am.
That's great. And Sean, I'm curious, so GW started off with this new apprenticeship program, and that's what we see as kind of the foundational starting piece for any company, organization that wants to really dive in and start an apprenticeship program. You have to start somewhere, right? And so I'm wondering what your expectations were when you first hired your first apprentice and you started in on this apprenticeship. Walk us through a little bit what that was like and kind of those first couple weeks.
Yeah, so I really didn't know what to expect. And one thing is that we didn't hire just one apprentice when we started this thing. We hired two. And actually we had Ryan and then another one named Mohammed. Mohammed's still here on staff. He is now graduated from his apprenticeship program, and he's here with us full time as a full-time employee. But yeah, as I said, I didn't really know what to expect. I managed people before, previously in a different position, but never managed an apprentice. So I didn't exactly know how it would be any different from other employees. And honestly, I have to say, managing an apprentice wasn't really that different from any other managerial position I've had before. Ryan and Mohammed were both great individuals, both go-getters. The hardest part actually was just trying to get the program set up within the human resources here at GW. But once we worked through the red tape, it was great. Ryan was a great self-motivated person, and he had a real appetite for knowledge. And so I was looking forward to having a person with tech experience in our office, just because we needed that help. Our website was pretty awful, and so Ryan was able to help us make it look a lot better.
Love that story. That's fantastic. And continuing this trend of talking about our first couple of weeks as an apprentice, I know I have some stories to share as well, but Ryan and Floor, maybe Ryan, we could start with you here. Could you walk us through what your first few months or first few weeks were on the job in your apprenticeship? And if you have any stories to share, feel free.
I would say excited and more nervous than anything, because at that point I didn't know what to expect. So it's like you're coming in and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to learn all of this stuff on the fly. I'm gonna have to learn the dynamics of an office. At that point, I was doing a lot of freelance work before also, and it was just a whole different vibe that you would get when you get into office. So when I first got here, I would say I was very nervous. Like I was nervous because I was expecting something else, and then it changed. It was like, okay, this is a different environment than what you're expecting. And then me able to flip it around and be like, okay, stop overthinking things and just go with the flow and go with what's going in front of you helped me a lot. But I would say my first month or two was nerve-wracking because I didn't, I never dealt with Drupal. So I sat there and I learned JavaScript. I learned everything else but PHP and Drupal. So when I got here, that was like, oh, okay, I got a problem here. I need to figure this out. but we also gave courses with Built Within. I used LinkedIn Learning. I used some other programs and got myself up to speed.
Flora, do we want to
Go
jump
ahead,
over to you?
Sure, of course. So, yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I remember feeling like a deer in headlights. It was a totally new environment. I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew that, I wanted to take on this challenge and I knew that I could learn. So that's kind of what I was going off of. Um, there was also a lot that I didn't understand and I didn't know. Kind of to Ryan's point, you're thrust in a new environment, and there's just a lot of information overload. But you have to get used to the feeling of being a beginner. I know that's very hard for a lot of people to kind of admit I don't know this or you made a mistake. But once you kind of get into that mindset, you ask questions and you're not afraid to admit what you don't know because you lean on others around you that are there. They're invested in your growth. So yeah, I think the initial shock is kind of intimidating, but once you get the hang of things, it's the sky's the limit.
I can absolutely relate to both of those answers, having been an apprentice myself. I remember my first couple weeks just running around to different meetings and writing down every word that I did not understand to later go look up. So I probably looked ridiculous. I was running around into all these meetings with pages and pages of unknown words, but can absolutely relate. So moving into our next question here, talking about the apprenticeship model, I think we all have some great stories about how it has helped us along the path. But I'm curious from all of our panelists here, how would you say the apprenticeship model helped and aided in your success so far? And anyone can start off with this one.
Go ahead, Sean.
Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, I can start. The apprenticeship model really helped us out because we worked with Build Within as that intermediary, and they provided us with great applicants who really had a somewhat of a background in web developing, and if they didn't have that background, they had that thirst for knowledge. So it helped us staff up pretty quickly. Because we had this role open and we wanted it filled as quickly as possible. So the apprenticeship program here really helps just like fill positions in a much faster timeline than normal.
I can go ahead.
Laura, I
Sorry,
think you jumped on mute for a second.
I muted myself. I'm sorry. Yeah, so as an apprentice, you're really learning on the job. So you have some wiggle room to make mistakes, to ask questions, lean onto others, and you become comfortable with learning, taking on new opportunities, getting out of your comfort zone. And I keep referring to it being a mindset, but it really helps put you in a frame of mind where you're open to learning. You see your progress, the people around you see your progress. So yeah, it's really motivating to keep going, and it's great because you really learn. You're not only learning, but you're kind of paid to learn on the job.
And I would agree. I would second that. I think it removes a lot of the things that you don't know, right? So you in your mind, you're probably picturing that it's one way, but when you actually do the work, it's something totally different than what you expect. Is, like I always tell my mom probably thinks that I'm just sitting behind a computer and like green screen stuff is just floating around. I'm just coding like it's no tomorrow. And it's a lot less techie versus problem solving, right? So you're not coding all the time. And that's the one thing I had to learn, is that I felt like, oh, I need to learn how to write every function, how to do all kind, do loops and everything else. And once I got into the environment, I realized it's just about solving problems and what is your process in tackling that problem.
Ryan, I think that's a great point and kind of segues perfectly into our next question here, how critical thinking is so important on the job, and something that you kind of learn and get better at as you progress, certainly. But thinking about kind of some of these key skills that have been important for you all to hone in on through your success so far. And we can talk about, broad strokes or specifically in kind of some of these tech career jobs that a lot of people are interested in. Does anyone have any key skills that they'd like to talk quickly about that are really important to call out?
Soft skills. Like, I really believe that people hire people that they like. One, like, you can always teach somebody to do a specific thing, but you can't teach somebody. You can't like somebody. It's sad to say, but it does happen. And the way you can float through a team itself, because I think in tech, everybody's going to be on a team. No one sits on a silo. So it's like you're going to have to be able to communicate with others. You're going to have to be able to play nice with others. And those soft skills take you a long way. I feel like there were people who were better at coding than me, like can probably code circles around me. But the fact that they were very to themselves, or they couldn't communicate their thoughts, or that those little roadblocks holds them back until they finally give in and just say, okay, I need to learn these soft. But I'd say soft skills is probably the most important thing, even over the tech part.
I think there are
Yeah.
two main skills, and one is problem identification. I know that problem solving is something that Ryan mentioned earlier, but really problem identification is where problem solving comes from. You can't really solve a problem unless you identify the true root cause of the problem. And I think that's one area that Ryan truly succeeded in. It was when we were trying to track participants that go through our programs, he realized that the main problem wasn't that we didn't have a system or anything. It was that he just needed to go in and build out this whole new system from scratch. So he identified the problem, was able to build out our solution. And then teamwork. In order to really identify a problem, you need to be able to work with everyone within the team so that they trust you to identify and solve this problem. Without teamwork, you can't really succeed really in any position, but especially with apprenticeships.
I couldn't agree more with what everyone else said. Communication is key, not having an ego. At the end of the day, you are working with people to an agreed upon goal, regardless of what your position is. Tech skills, that can all be learned. You're learning from everyone around you, but really being able to communicate, owning up to your mistakes, asking questions, and understanding that it's a pursuit of knowledge, and everyone around you is there to help you, and you are a important person within the group as well. So just because you might not know things doesn't mean that your input and your questions are valuable. So yeah, definitely being able to communicate and just work cross-functionally.
So we have a question from Fino that I thought we could answer live here. And there are a couple pieces to this that I'd like to cover. The first question is, are apprenticeships paid? And the great thing about the apprenticeship model is that it falls under the earn while learn model. And so a lot of apprenticeships, or all of apprenticeships, are paid. And what I will say is that sometimes it is less than the employee salary, or someone that has gone through an apprenticeship and finished their apprenticeship and moved on to a full-time role. But the goal of that apprenticeship is to make yourself more marketable and hopefully increase your salary at the end of the year, which we see a lot of throughout most apprenticeships that complete their apprenticeship. And then there's a second part of this question here about, are the apprenticeships only in technology? And another great thing about apprenticeships is that they're across several industries. So hospitality or finance, marketing, sales, you name it, there's probably an apprenticeship or someone that's interested in hiring in those positions. And so what we do is a lot of what our work is done is try and convince those employers that hiring an apprentice would be a good idea. And so there can be apprenticeships all over in several industries, and they're not just tech focused, but rather more broad strokes. Anything I left off from our panelists that you'd like to add onto those questions?
Oh, that hit it on the nose. Well, I would add, do not look at the pay as your decision making. Like, do not, that the whole goal is to supplement your income, but the whole goal is to get in the door, to navigate within the company. So my situation would be, I got in the door, and then now I'm inside. So now I have access to HR. I have access to whoever it is. If I wasn't in the door, I wouldn't have had access, and I wouldn't have been able to find what would work for me within the company.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for adding that, Ryan. So another question here for Sean. As a hiring manager, do you have any advice that you would give to someone who is not currently in the tech industry and wants to hire an apprentice?
Yeah, of course. Just be patient. I think that's the number one piece of advice I have, especially if you're working in an established firm like this 200-year-old university I currently work for. There's a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of red tape, but if you work well with everyone across the university and build partnerships across the different divisions or areas, units, then you can build out an apprenticeship program. Working through this bureaucracy took a lot of time, but it ultimately paid off. We got now 3 great apprentices. We backfilled Ryan's position with another apprentice, so we're on our 3rd apprentice here in the Office of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. But yeah, that's the biggest thing. Just have a lot of patience and work nicely with others so that you can build this apprenticeship program in your organization.
That's great. Thanks for that, Sean. We had another question here from David that I thought we could work in and answer live. The question here is, what are the qualifications needed to be accepted into an apprenticeship? And are there any apprenticeships in data analytics? And I'll answer the first or the second half of that question first by saying, yes, Build Within actually has a data analysis apprentice currently. And she is absolutely killing it and learning a ton in data analysis. So that's the first part of that question. And then the second one is the qualifications kind of depend on the employer and the hiring manager. While we encourage employers to transition to the apprenticeship model and try this out for sure, it is dependent on them and what their hiring needs are and what they look like. Anything from our panelists that I missed out on that question that you'd like to add? All right, great. Well, I think, let's see here. We've got one more question before we start to wrap up here. This is from Thomas. Was there a written path for success before the apprentices were hired? Sean, would you be up for answering that one?
Yeah, of course. No, at least when we were first starting, there was no written path for success. We had a job description outlined, and I would say hiring an apprentice is almost just like hiring any other position. We had a job description, and we were looking for the best candidate that fits that job description. And we realized that with apprentices, that it maybe take some time to fulfill all the obligations of the job description, but that's the whole point of an apprenticeship, right? You learn while earning. So as long as they had the basic skills and were willing to learn, we take them on.
I think one of my big takeaways here is that we have a couple apprentices who are absolutely thriving, having done an apprenticeship and have moved on and are absolutely killing it in their new roles. And then Sean, kudos to you for saying yes to the apprentice and all that came with it. And we're excited that GW continues to hire apprentices and continues that conversation. All right, folks. Well, I think those are all of our questions that we have here for today. So I'll wrap up by saying to Flor, Sean, and Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today. We do have some more webinars and webcasts following shortly here that I think Jen is going to pop up on the screen. So for anyone that enjoyed the conversation today, feel free to register for our upcoming webinars. And you can also find those at apprenticeshiphubs.com. And for anyone that would like to check out our previous webinars or the webinar today, those will also be up on our YouTube page. We also have some in-person events coming up. We have one in LA on February 22nd, which I believe I will be at in person. I'm very excited for that one. And another one in February 24th. So a couple events coming up in February. Don't miss out and make sure to register for those. And we'll see you there. All right, everyone. Well, thanks again for joining. If you're joining us live, we will see you next time. To our panelists, thanks again for taking some time out of your day. We appreciate you.